Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, it's time for another episode of Everybody Loves Raymond being reviewed. It, of course, is Season 9, Episode 4. This is PT&A. And I know at the end of the last episode I said I had no recollection of this one, but the moment the episode started, I'm like, oh yeah. This is the episode where Debra dresses a little risque at the PTA meeting held at her house because of something she's told one of the other parents said about her. Now, this is another one written by Tom Caltabiano, and just his character interactions, his fingerprints are all over there. I have to say, this is a pretty decent episode. Had some fun moments here and there. I still say it's definitely not going on the list, but it's because this is an interesting concept, and while I did have fun with it, just other than like the basic bare bones thing of it, it's like it just kind of seems like they're really stretching for ideas at this point. Not to say that, yeah, but like I said, the episode isn't not to say it's not fun, but it's just like, yeah, they probably should have ended on the high note of the previous season, but this is one of the highlights beyond the episodes that I actually do remember from this season. And that's just because of the concept and the execution by the actors. Now, episode starts following a previous PTA meeting. And of course, Debra's going off on Ray a little bit because he got a stain on his shirt. You know, couldn't you dress up a little more? What you wear and what you do reflects on me, which I get that to a point, but I think the way Debra's going off on Ray right now with it is really crossing the line. And initially, until he crosses the line, I do agree with Ray. Like, it's a PTA meeting. What he's wearing is fine for a PTA meeting. It's a dress casual shirt. You don't have to be wearing, like, classy business attire for a PTA meeting. I mean, even for a graduation wearing, like, super fancy tie things are probably pushing it. So I get it. Now, him making a mess of himself because of what they had over at the buffet thing, that I get. But that's just Debra doing her usual stuff. For all we know, it could have been a legit accident, but knowing how Ray eats sometimes at this stuff, especially with the previous PTA meeting he saw where he was stuffing his pants with food, it's probably him being a slob. Now, that doesn't make up for the fact that she is lambasting him in the living room and all that, but it absolutely does not excuse what Ray does. He tells her that he overheard a couple of the other parents saying she looks like a tramp in the attire she's wearing, and from what we see, what Debra's wearing in this episode is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But, you know, this is Ray throwing that at her because he knows his wife, he knows she's going to be thinking, like, why would they say that? Now, with how the episode frames it, it looks like this is something he legitimately heard, and given how people can be, and some of the other mothers, most likely did not grow out of their little clique phase from high school. I mean, we saw a little bit of that in the reunion episode, that some of them did not, even though that's more Ray's peers from high school versus the parents here. I can believe it. But of course, as we find out, Ray told a fib when it came to it. He made it up just so Debra can get a little sense of how he feels whenever she's always critiquing it. Now, Ray's big mistake was actually telling Robert this. Because, you know, Robert's gonna... He might out him, but he's also gonna not let Ray live it down until Ray decides to come clean and tell the truth. And Ray does look like he's gonna tell Debra at one point, but Ray being Ray, he doesn't. Then we skip to the next PTA meeting, and this is after they've had their conversation about, you know, what you wear reflects on me. And Ray's wearing a more upscale dress shirt, because before he was wearing more like a business casual one, now he's wearing a long sleeve one, and one of the parents even asked, where are you guys going after this? Nah, this is just what I wear around the house. That is like really Ray. But then again, he probably didn't want to make Debra more angry with that, and plus, you know, you know what. Well, everything seems like it's going to be another normal PTA meeting until Debra comes downstairs. And what she's rocking, Patricia Heaton back here, at this time, she definitely rocked it. But it's just the makeup department and everything around it is like, oh yeah, this is definitely inappropriate wear for a PTA meeting. Like if she was going out to an 80s themed party, this would be appropriate. But for like a PTA meeting, it's like, no. And just looking at this, I couldn't help but think of a certain song that came out in this time period. And it's kind of interesting considering the name connection. Debbie just hit the wall. She never had it all. It really does fit what she's wearing here. And everyone is looking at her like, a lot of pearl clutching. And this continues further into the scene because Debra looks like she's trying to hold it together and like keep the meeting going at first, but then one of the mothers, who it's one of the ones that Ray said something about her, tries to talk to her about it, excuse me. And Debra looks like she's going to go into the direction of lambasting her, and Ray interjects. Everything seems like it's going to go off the rails even more. And you'd be right, but it goes off the rails in the way you would expect, knowing this family. Because who shows up but the Barones? Now, even without everything that's going on here, their interjection here would be one of those things you'd look at them and go, why are you guys here? You guys messed up the TV and your first thought was to come here when it's obvious we have company and don't want you. But again, when has stuff like that ever stopped Frank and Marie from doing something stupid like this? Well, they show up, and of course the reactions are what you would expect. Especially from Marie. She's the one really doing the pearl clutching. Especially once all the parents end up leaving. She's the one that keeps lambasting. Now, some of what she's going to say, you can see the logic of. Where she goes on like, once a woman hits a certain time in her life, there's certain things she should not be wearing. I mean, which I get. I mean, once you get to a certain age, and you could say this for both genders, but primarily this seems to be more that just because of how society is. I'm not going to delve too much into it, but I have to address it here because how society is. This seems to be more something that's sent towards women. Is that once you get to a certain part in your life, certain things are off limits to wear. And back in the 2000s, is definitely something that would have still been prevalent. Now it's still there, depending on where you're at, but with how people are aging a little bit more gracefully, and one of those things you're like, oh really, that person's 50? That person's 60? Damn. I could see it being a little bit less likely to happen, outside of certain circles. Now, it doesn't mean it's not going to, but less likely than here, unless you're in the same type of mindset Marie is here. Now, Marie continues with her little speech here, talking about, like, once you get to a certain age, you shouldn't be wearing something, even when you think you should be wearing something, you shouldn't. You keep, ham it down an inch for every year. It's Marie doing her typical Marie crap. Which, I love the fact that Frank interjects and says one of the zingers of the episode. And this is one where I'm like, I forgot about this zinger, and this is one thing that really made me love this part and appreciate Frank a little bit more here. It's like when Marie's talking about adding an inch for every year. He comes in and points out, like, well, shouldn't you be wearing, I forget the type of coat he says, but I believe it's something along the lines of like a long blanket. I know I'm messing up the delivery, but it's Peterborough's delivery, the writing of the comment, and the timing of it. All three of them come together. It makes quite a zinger one-liner from Frank. I mean, it's not among his best of the entire show, but it's definitely the type of zinger this episode deserved and needed at this point. Especially to interject and stop Marie, or attempt to stop Marie, I should say, because it continues on. And, there's a lot more back and forth in this part. And, of course, the fact that Ray was the one that actually said the comment and it wasn't from the mothers is brought up. Now, one thing I forgot to mention was Amy also said something that was it was like one of those things that's half mean but not fully mean. So it kind of shows Amy's probably spent a little bit too much time around Marie, but it's not said in the same type of way Marie would say it. And that's also what made Debra upset, those combination of things. Now here, that's brought up a little bit when Ray does confess it, but Ray, he does come out and confess it 100%, so I got to give Ray a little bit prop there, but it's one of those things like Ray, you shouldn't have said it to begin with. And from what you would expect with these characters, the ending does kind of devolve into what you would expect with it. And with that, there's not really much else to say. Like I said, it's a pretty decent, fun episode. I don't know if this could have been made earlier in the show, maybe like a couple seasons earlier at most, because of the subject matter and how they touch on it, but this definitely works better as a later season idea. It's just by this point in the show how it's starting to lose its luster. It stands out a little bit with the zinger, but you can tell that even for the character writers that have been here from the beginning or near since the beginning, even though they're writing the character interaction spot on, it's hard for them to come up continuously with material to use without recycling a lot of the same crap we've seen before. Or, and this is more my main problem, making some of the big character moments we've seen not meaning crap. And that's my main issue with a lot of the stuff here, especially when it comes to Marie. We've seen the character progress and have moments, but now we're getting the stagnation part from the status quo reset where it's like, what was the point of those moments if Marie's still just going to act like the busybody, manipulative character she has always been without any character development? Now I know this is a time still with writing like that where they weren't expected to do stuff like that, like wholesale change stuff, at least with sitcoms. But even then, just watching it, it's like, it just doesn't make... I know, I'm getting really too far on it and I'm beating that dead horse, but especially with an episode like this and how Marie is and treats Debra at the point, even though you see where she's coming from, I just can't help but comment on it. There's going to be a lot of episodes in the future I think we're going to comment on that. Let me look at my list real quick. I don't remember the next step. Don't remember that one. Boys Therapy, there's a little bit of it, but that's one of the highlights. There's going to be a couple in the future, but I think this might be the last one, actually, that I can remember where it's like that. I'm looking to see if this episode got any nominations or anything. Nope. That's really all I could talk about with this episode. Next episode is definitely going to be one that you had to wait until this part of the show to do. I mean, you could have probably done it a couple seasons ago, but I think it fits more here because of the fact that it is revolving around Allie, and she's at that age. I know I'm just giving a little minor spoiler for it, but this is about her grades not being the best, and it's going to be because of what age she's at. That's, of course, going to be Allie's if, and that is for next time, everybody. Till then.